Bloodbenders, the most unbeatable characters in a straight-up one-to-one fight in the Avatar franchise, barring the Avatar in the Avatar state and a few spirits, but beyond those people, unbeatable. Today, let's find out who among them is the strongest. Hello one and all, welcome to my Avatar tier list series where I rank the skill and strength of each Avatar character we've seen in a fight and find out who's the best. Today, we are looking at the unique waterbending ability known as bloodbending. If this is your first time seeing a video in this series, go ahead and check out the playlist floating around my head in the upper something corner or in the description box below. If you've already been going and following the series, just continue watching. And let's dive into the most unbeatable characters of Avatar.
And I passed years developing the skill that would lead to my escape. Bloodbending.
Though she ranks at the bottom of my list, we have to give props to the grandmother of bloodbending itself, Hama. As is the case with most inventors and creators, they are often surpassed by their predecessors. James Naismith invented basketball, but modern NBA players perfected it. Charles Babbage technically invented the first computer, but these guys perfected it. And with Hama, she invented and sort of discovered bloodbending, but it was her successors who surpassed her. Very quickly, in fact, including her first student, Katara. Granted, I see Katara's grasp of bloodbending so quickly as a bit of bad writing, but what crazy person would be critical of The Last Airbender, right? Right? I would say some of the weakest writing in this whole entire franchise revolves around bloodbending and the kinds of corner it puts characters into, characters who are fighting against bloodbenders, I mean. More on that later. Now I'm looking at you, Legend of Korra. Now who's crazy for being critical of Legend of Korra? No one? No one? That all said, it's pretty clear where Hama should rank. It's super dope that she discovered this ability all of her own, but as it stands, she is the weakest bloodbender on this list.
You're not the only one who draws power from the moon. My bending is more powerful than yours, Hama. Katara
is here because she mastered bloodbending in a matter of minutes against Hama, but she also swore off the ability, which puts a glass ceiling in terms of her prosperity with the power. One might say that she should rank higher among the bloodbender list, but I don't really deal in hypothetical feats, only concrete ones. A lot of fans try to say that, well, hey, if Katara did train with bloodbending, she would be among, the top tier of bloodbenders. But as it stands, she swore off of it, and we've never seen her actually train with it. So we can't assume what we haven't seen. We have no examples of Katara being able to bloodbend without the full moon, which to me is what would elevate her a level up in this bloodbender tier list. In fact, I would argue that it's more likely based on evidence that she did not learn how to use this ability without the full moon, but in fact wasn't able to do this at all. And this is all based on the Legend of Korra flashback with Yakone. Yakone was accused during this time period to bloodbend people without the full moon, to which his lawyer said this was impossible because, as we know, or at least at this time as we knew, it's impossible for a waterbender to do this without a full moon. At this point in the story, it would have made sense for Sokka, who was on the judging panel, to go up and say, hey, my sister was able to do this, she learned this when she was yada yada age, but he doesn't. Instead, he classifies Yakone as a unique bender. Not his sister, not anyone between the 100-Year War or the construction of Republic City, but Yakone and Yakone alone. Therefore, Katara can only be placed at this class rank because she is limited by the full moon as a bloodbender.
You're a bloodbender?
Very observant.
It's not a full moon.
Under the tutelage of his father and alongside his brother Noatok, Tarrlok was trained in the unique bending techniques of bloodbending without the full moon. We first experienced this ability in the episode When Extremes Meet. After finding himself on the losing end of a battle with Korra, he pulls out the cheat codes and bloodbends her into submission. But it's all done without the aid of the full moon, which up until this point was deemed to be impossible. Though he was capable of the unique form of moonless bloodbending, he still only ranks as a second rank character because of his confrontation with his brother Amon, whereas he was only able to slow down his brother but not able to overcome him entirely.
What did you do to me? Your firebending is gone. Forever.
And then we have the big bad from Legend of Korra, Book 1. His placement over his brother Tarrlok comes by way of their direct confrontation, where at a strength of wills, Amon was able to overcome him. But beyond that, Amon has another ability that puts him up in the next level. Not only is he able to stop someone's movements through bloodbending, but he was also able to discover a new ability to block the chi paths of a bender so that they cannot touch the elements at all. While not as strong as true energy bending, and this is not energy bending at all, it is still an ingenious twist on bloodbending to be able to come up with the idea of blocking someone's paths with blood clots, basically. Now, on the other hand, we have Yakone, the granddaddy of this unique bloodbending, and the most notorious crime lord in Republic City. He is perhaps the strongest Avatar character, barring the avatars or certain spirits. Fans tend to forget how impressive his feats were in the courtroom in that flashback scene. Not only did he subdue the entire courtroom, which included a very fully realized Avatar in Aang, but he did it with his hands cuffed to his wrists. Compare that to Amon and we simply don't have any feats that compare to his father. Yes, we have Tarrlok, who was able to subdue the entire City Hall procession who came to bring him in, but he had to do this with the strain of hand gestures, which, generally speaking, using hand gestures in media showcases a weaker telepath or psychic or anything like that. In this case, it's bloodbending, and in this specific case, psychic bloodbending. However, if we consider that Amon was able to overcome Tarrlok, then he should be able to replicate that feat and then some. But still, that doesn't quite scale to what his father was able to do, and we don't really have any concrete feats to say that Amon can do the same, even based on his little confrontation with Tarrlok. What's more, it was only the Avatar state that was able to subdue Yakone, whereas Amon was able to be overcome by Mako, a firebender, and Avatar Korra's airbending stuff, which I assume was her fleshing out her chi path through airbending? I don't know. Like I said before, I would come back to the bad writing of bloodbending. Whether it's in The Last Airbender or Legend of Korra, I feel like when people or characters are put into the corners of bloodbending, they sometimes, come out with these things that just come out of the blue. But that's what happens when you have a character who is so overpowered. The only way to overcome them is by means of Deus Ex Machina, presumptions, but quite frankly, plot-induced stupidity. And for me, the only way I make sense for Korra being able to break her hold of Amon when she had her airbending finally come out is because airbending is a very spirit-based form of bending, and that could be the reason why she was able to free up her past, because airbending and spirits and mumbo jumbo, I really don't know. That's just my headcanon. That doesn't mean that's not confirmed in any of the lore. That's just the way I make sense of that sequence of just Korra winning at the end because they had no idea how to write her out of that corner. But I can't make that same excuse for Mako. I mean, granted, one can say that it's slightly an easy ability to be able to do your lightning with just 2 fingers, but even so, I still have a bit of an issue with that. It would make sense if a character like Jinora was in that situation, because Jinora, we already know, is very spirit-based and she's very in tune with that sort of a thing. So for her to break free, I can make sense of that because, reasons, spirits. But when it comes to Mako, it just, again, feels like bad writing. Whatever the case, despite the fact that Yakone never discovered this ability to block someone else's bending, and the fact that Amon had more time to hone and craft his bloodbending skill, I still would be more inclined to favor Yakone in a direct one-to-one fight between the two. And this is based mostly on his, showing in that courtroom scene. Again, we just don't really have anything from Amon to showcase that in terms of just straight power scaling and just a direct tug-of-war of bloodbending that he'd be able to overcome his father. Now, the reason why I put them on the same rank is that I will concede that it's enough of a debate that they wouldn't really or shouldn't really be separated by a class rank. But still, if I had to put my money on it, if I was doing a versus series, for instance, I would favor Yakone over Amon, but they're close enough in skill and knowledge that they shouldn't really be separated. And really, this is a case of Yakone having better feats of quantity, whereas Amon has better feats of quality, marking both of them as the most unbeatable characters in the Avatar franchise. And that's it. The most unbeatable characters of the Avatar universe. Yes, while some spirit-based characters will be able to defeat them or at least contend with them because they can't be affected by bloodbending because they don't have blood, I still had to orient this list in some matter because in the case of most human characters, there's nothing that they can do against a bloodbender. So keep that in mind as you are considering this list. As I've said before in some of my versus videos, it's not always a case of the transitive property, and not all characters are created equal. There isn't really a perfect transitive property to these kinds of fights, and really in anything in these kinds of head-to-head contests, whether we're talking about sports teams, we're talking about fictional characters. Not often can you just straight up say, well, this character beats this character, so that character must beat this character, unless of course there's, a huge divide of power. But sometimes there are cases where a specific certain skill set is a trump to another skill set. So in the case of bloodbending against other humans, that is an obvious advantage. But if you're fighting someone who is a spirit, you don't have that same advantage. Next up, we'll look at the most legendary characters in the Avatar franchise. But I'll extend the question out to you. Do you agree with the order of my list, or do you think it should be rearranged? Who do you think is the most powerful bloodbender in the franchise? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.